If it's January, it must be time for us to talk about Light of Day, the annual festival coming here in just a few days. We have Joe Durso, who's the president of Light of Day, and Tony Pallagrosi, the executive director and one of the co-founders of Light of Day. Good morning and welcome to both of you.
Good morning, Jim.
Morning. How are you?
Let's take you back to November of 1998, Tony, and you're planning a surprise birthday party for Bob Benjamin in Red Bank. Tell us about the roots of Light of Day.
Well, Rich Russo and I decided to throw a surprise birthday party for Bob, kind of to pick up his spirits after his diagnosis with early onset Parkinson's. And as most surprise parties go, the object of the surprise ends up knowing more about the surprise than you do. And a couple of days before the surprise party, I got a call from Bob, and Bob said, "You know that surprise party you and Rich are going to throw for me? Well, why don't we pass the hat and collect money and donate it to the Parkinson's Disease Foundation in New York, because they've been very helpful to me for, pointing me at doctors and therapies and basically navigating him through the beginning stages of his disease." So that's what we did. And we wasn't called Light of Day. It was just a birthday party for Bob. We collected about $2,000 that night. And fast forward, we're over $6.5 million.
That's an amazing figure, a staggering figure. And congratulations to you and the organization for being able to pull that off.
Yeah, I mean, no big check writers, although we do have a big angel in Bruce Springsteen. So
I guess he's kind of considered the patron saint of Light of Day, right? Between the song itself and then his involvement off and on over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that, the patron saint. He's a good Catholic boy too. So
Yeah, that's
Joe,
what I've always called him that on stage, the
oh
patron saint
yeah,
of the day. Yeah. Oh
cool.
yeah. Us altar boys got to stick together.
Joe, from those early roots of Bob's birthday bash, when did it turn into this whole Light of Day?
Well, at some point, we were doing the single show for the first few years, and we went to two shows. But I would say about year 10, and Tony, correct me if I'm wrong, Tony came up with this great idea of Winterfest. We're having thousands of people on the Jersey Shore in the middle of the winter on the boardwalk, and somehow it worked. Tony, you remember what year that was?
No. So I'll take your word for it. It sounds good.
Yeah, it's about, I would think we were about 15 years of Winterfest now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
somewhere around that. Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
it turned into this amazing thing. And that was probably about the same time we started going over to Europe for Light of Day Europe, but we're about to celebrate our 15th anniversary next year. And it's just been great over the years to see how many Europeans have come to Asbury Park in the middle of the winter, which, I'm not sure I'm not sure too many marketing companies could have done that sales job, but having great music in Asbury Park has been a great thing to have on our side, that's for sure.
You
Yeah,
know,
and when that started to happen, Asbury Park was not the Asbury Park that it is now.
No.
Not even close. And it was incredible to have people on the boardwalk. Well, actually, you didn't have people on the
Yeah.
boardwalk in the summertime in Asbury Park at that point. So
Yeah.
having people on the boardwalk in January
Yeah,
was,
when we started the first years in 2000, 2001, and 2 at the Pony, there was no shops open, I think, at all on the boardwalk, or very
everything closed.
none in the winter stayed open, that's for sure. Yeah.
in a way, it reminds me a little bit of South by Southwest, which started obviously small and then is now huge. And you really have to plan it out if you decide to go to South by Southwest. And the same thing with Light of Day, with so many different shows and so many amazing artists. You really have to pick and choose the ones that you want to see, which you can find out, of course, at lightofday.org. How daunting is it to put on something of this scope, Tony?
Well, fortunately, I became a concert promoter 30 some years ago, so I have a lot of practice at putting these things together. And I do have to say that without the team that we have in Light of Day, and equally as importantly, and I think more importantly, um, the team that we have of professional music of music professionals in Asbury Park, crew people, loaders, stage hands, sound techs, lighting techs, and the venues themselves that are used to dealing with national touring acts. So they're all prepared basically for whatever we could throw at them, and they handled it great. And Joe, correct me if you think I'm wrong. I think it would have been very difficult to do this in a city or a town that didn't have the infrastructure,
It,
musical,
yeah,
professional infrastructure that we have in Asbury Park.
I think it's safe to say it doesn't happen. I don't think
Yeah.
it would have happened. Not to this scale, certainly. Having, like you said, all the different people at the venues, having our dear friend Jason Dermer from Asbury Audio, who's now become a board member. It's I don't think you could do it. We have 12 venues going, sometimes 40 something shows. And Jim, I'm not sure you could see, but this is the app that's out there now that has every listing of every show. People can go to lightofday.org and link onto the app. And I use it getting around daily to see where I have to be, what shows I'm going to. And then you can also program, I believe, your schedule so you can know when to go to what venues, similar to like any other really high-end music festival. And the big difference of those festivals are they're for profit and we're a charity music festival. I think we might be the only one that exists in the country.
I haven't seen another one,
No.
not to this scale now.
Nobody's as crazy to
You know,
do it. Like,
the thing is, I mean, we didn't have anything to lose and everything to gain.
yeah.
So we just gave it a shot. And the coolest thing about the Light of Day Winterfest is that it really grew organically. We didn't force it. We didn't try to, first year to have the biggest music festival in the United States.
Mm-mm.
Um, so it really took its own time and it developed in its own way. And I think that's one of the beauties of it.
Yeah,
Ju-
and we have almost a 20-person board of directors now, but using that term is almost kind of funny, though we're very legitimate, without a doubt, on a professional level now. But when we started off, it was just about 6 to 8 friends of Bob, and that's what we used to call ourselves, friends of Bob. And we would meet, and over the years, it became, oh, we probably should be more formalized with a president and this and that. And then eventually Tony became our executive director. But it really was, as Tony said, organic. And I, being an early member of World Hunger Year from 1997, I remember saying to Bill Ayers one day, I always wonder what it was like in the 80s and the 70s, how you guys formed. And then to actually live through it now and be part of Light of Day was a pretty amazing gift to be handed to me.
Joe, you talked about doing a music festival in January in Asbury Park, and it's all cold down the boardwalk. And, thinking, are we actually going to get people here? Asbury Park has obviously experienced a resurgence over maybe the last decade and a half, 2 decades, what have you, between the LGBTQ community. And you see those shirts, Music Saved Asbury Park. How important do you think the Light of Day shows have been to the renaissance of that city?
We're definitely a cog in the wheel. Um, I would take no more responsibility than that. I mean, I don't know how big of a cog, how small of a cog, but we're definitely a cog in that wheel. Like we said, there was nothing going on for a lot of years, so we brought some income into businesses that really needed it, and we used to be in November, which is actually Bob's birthday. Bob had the brain surgery for Parkinson's in November, so we moved it to January so he could recover. And then we realized January was a pretty cool time because it was away from the holidays. And by a few weeks after New Year's Eve, people were looking for something to do again. So we kept it in January.
Yeah, and we focused on, and actually this was Gene Mickle, one of our board members' idea, was to do it on the Martin Luther King weekend because the Monday was a holiday.
Right.
So not only did we have a month all to ourselves, literally,
Mm,
but we had a holiday weekend.
right.
So it was just a
Give us
matter, giving the audience, giving the potential audience something that they wanted to see and participate in. And certainly I knew as a concert promoter who kind of grabbed Asbury Park after John Scher had left it and reopened Convention Hall and the Paramount Theater, created the Stone Pony Summer Stage, ran the Stone Pony all through the 90s. That music, like a great restaurant, was the one thing that people would come to no matter what shape the town was in or the city was in.
Joe, what are some of the shows that we can look forward to in this year's Light of Day festival?
Well, we kick off on Wednesday night. Before we get into Winterfest, there is the kickoff at City Winery, songwriter show on Wednesday night in New York City, which has an incredible bill of, Willie Nile and Tony might. I don't have it right in front of me, but there's, we always have our certain family members on every show. And then we kick off Thursday night with William Zahner at the Wonder Bar. Jake
Oh,
Thistle.
fantastic cat.
Fantastic Cat,
Love it.
Dramarama's Friday night at the
Yeah.
Wonder Bar. Myself and Stone Caravan with Joe Grishecki and Willie Nile are at the Pony on Friday night as well.
That's also the Danny
Tangier
Clinch.
Blues Band
Yeah.
with Danny
Big
Clinch.
jam.
That'll be a
Yeah.
great show. Uh, there's so many, and the cool one, there's a really great show at McClune's at noon on Saturday, which I will be at performing. We have this awesome band called Dead Air. We're
Never
doing
heard of them.
Never heard of them. We have a tribute to Pat Denizio, who was a dear friend of ours, light of days. In 1986, when I got out of college, it was the first band I worked on with the Ramones at a legendary place called Premier Talent Agency. So the Smithereens are very, very dear to my heart. So we're doing this for Pat and the band, and we have a lot of great singers coming in doing guest vocals. And it's just, Tony, there's some other shows out there if you want.
Oh, you took all the good ones.
Well, the Songwriters Crawl on Sunday.
Yeah, of course, there's the main event, which is sold out, with Brian Fallon, with Jesse Malin performing in Asbury Park,
Yeah,
New
that's
Jersey.
so cool that Jesse's going to be a part of that.
Yeah, and he's the featured performer that night.
Yeah.
He's going to play about an hour. We have Johnny Resnick from the Goo Goo Dolls. I mean, the cast of characters that's playing that is really incredible. We have singer-songwriter shows on Sunday. We used to call it our boardwalk crawl, but one of the shows is now not on the boardwalk. Starts at the Watermark at noon. These are Nashville-style singer-songwriter circles. Then it goes to the Berkeley Hotel at 3 o'clock, and it ends at McClune's at 6 o'clock, which is already sold out. And then after that, and they're all Nashville-style singer-songwriter shows. After that, we have our last note show, which is kind of the goodbye show for the festival. And that's going to be at the R Bar, and a great Asbury Park centered band, the Ocean Avenue Stompers, is going to be headlining that, and they're going to be bringing their friends in. I think Danny Clinch is going to be coming, playing harmonica with them. And they're a New Orleans style jazz, kind of street brass band. They're great.
Moving away from Light of Day, if I can, just for a couple of moments, Tony, in addition to your work with Light of Day, you were also one of the Jukes in the early days. And the announcement coming recently that Southside Johnny has decided to retire from touring. What are some of your favorite memories of those early days with the Jukes?
Well, I mean, obviously the May 30th live broadcast from the Stone Pony. That was incredible. I mean, I was a beach kid from Lavalette that still had sand under his toenails, and and I had no idea that I would be thrust into this situation. It kind of happened by chance, and suddenly I'm in a recording band. And in those days, the idea of recording isn't what it is now, where you can record a really great sounding record in your kitchen, pretty much. In those days, there were only a few places like in the country, where you could actually make a really quality recording. So to actually be in a recording band was just beyond my dream. And so obviously that was just a great moment. The first time I played with Bruce and the E Street Band, that was at the Count Basie, what was the Monmouth Arts Center at the time. It's now the Count Basie Theater. That was an incredible moment. I remember the first time the Jukes played to like 40,000 people It was at a festival at the University of Massachusetts. And what they tell you about playing to 40,000 people is true. You just see the first couple of hundred, and the rest are just they're out there somewhere, you know. But anyway, so those were three good ones.
Joe, in addition to your work with Light of Day, you've also been a part, as you mentioned a little earlier, of Why Hunger Year. Peter Yarrow, who was a factor in that as well, passed away. What are your memories of Peter?
You know, I was searching this morning while I was laying in bed to change my Facebook photo. I have a photo of myself and Peter and myself in a very large dragon as well. I did a benefit thanks to my dear friend Sue Leventhal, who was the director of Hungerthon for many years at Why Hunger. I did a show with Peter. I did a few shows with Peter, but one in particular was, I think, at PS8 in New York City. His mom had been a teacher there. So every year he went back and did a benefit, and he invited me to do the afternoon show as he was doing two shows. And I remember a few things about Peter. One, he uh, was very particular about his sound checks. He would walk around the room and check, check, check. Told me stories about Dylan. First time I ever heard him called Bobby, which happens in the film now after seeing the film. And he then invited me to do the evening show with him. He said, "Hey, I really liked your set. Could you want to stay and do the evening?" I said, "I'd love to." He goes, "But those three songs you did, don't do that third one. Do a different one." Peter wasn't short on an opinion, and I said, "Okay." And then the best thing of that evening, which I went to University 101 that night, was he invited me up for his encores, and we did "We Shall Overcome." um, Puff the Magic Dragon, um, Blowing in the Wind. I did like four really big folk classics with Peter. And I walked out of there that night just thanking Sue and going like, how did I get here? How did that just happen? He was a great friend to Why Hunger. He was an activist. He walked the walk his whole life and made no apologies for it.
Light of Day Winterfest coming. Joe Derso, president of Light of Day, and Tony Pallagrosi, the executive director and one of the co-founders. You can get all the details at lightofday.org. Guys, thank you so much for your time this morning, and we'll see you at this year's event.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Jim.
Jim.
See you
Yep.
at McLuhan's.
Yep.